What would you do if you woke up from a 3-year coma to discover your husband had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only divorce papers and an empty bank account? Would you accept that your life was over? Or would you fight to uncover the truth? That's exactly what happened to Sarah Chen, a 32-year-old teacher who discovered that everything she'd been told about her accident was a lie. What she found hidden in her own home didn't just expose her husband's betrayal, it revealed a conspiracy worth millions and dangerous enough that someone had already tried to kill her once. Before we dive into this shocking story of survival, betrayal, and ultimate justice, let us know where you're watching from. Sarah Chen's eyes fluttered open to unfamiliar ceiling tiles and the steady beep of medical monitors. The last thing she remembered was driving home from her job as a high school biology teacher in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Now, harsh fluorescent lights stung her eyes as a nurse rushed to her bedside, dropping a clipboard in shock. "Oh my God, you're awake! Dr. Martinez, she's awake." The confusion that followed was overwhelming. 3 years. She had been unconscious for 3 years. The doctors called it a miracle. Patients who remained in comas this long rarely woke up, and even fewer retained their cognitive abilities. But as Sarah struggled to process the lost time, one question burned through the medical explanations and rehabilitation schedules. Where was Marcus, her husband of 7 years, the man who had promised to love her in sickness and health? Was nowhere to be found. When she finally managed to ask, the nurses exchanged uncomfortable glances. It was Dr. Martinez who eventually delivered the truth with practiced gentleness. "Mrs. Chen, your husband, he filed for divorce 2 years ago. He cited irretrievable breakdown due to your medical condition. The papers were processed in your absence through your court-appointed guardian." The words hit harder than any physical pain. Marcus had left her. While she lay fighting for her life, he had abandoned her. But it was what came next that truly shattered her world. Your house was sold to cover medical expenses. Your personal belongings are in storage unit 47B at Riverside Storage. Your mother has been paying the monthly fee. Sarah's mother, Eleanor, arrived within hours, aged by worry and grief. Through tears, she explained how Marcus had handled everything with cold efficiency. He'd claimed power of attorney, liquidated their assets, and disappeared 6 months after the accident. No forwarding address, no explanation beyond legal documents. "I tried to stop him, sweetheart," Eleanor whispered, clutching Sarah's hand. "But he had all the paperwork, said it was what you would have wanted, to not be a burden." As Sarah lay in that hospital bed, weak from years of inactivity, she felt something harder than despair settling in her chest. It was determination. Marcus had counted on her never waking up. He'd erased their life together while she slept, but Sarah Chen was awake now, and she was going to find out why her husband had been in such a hurry to make her disappear. 3 weeks after waking, Sarah sat in a wheelchair at Riverside Storage, staring at the metal door of Unit 47B. Her mother hovered nervously beside her, holding the key that represented all that remained of Sarah's former life. "Maybe we should wait until you're stronger," Eleanor suggested. "The doctors said not to push yourself." But Sarah had already waited 3 years. Her physical therapy sessions were progressing well. She could walk short distances with a walker, but it was answer she needed more than muscle strength. The combination lock clicked open, and the rolling door revealed a sad collection of boxes, furniture, and plastic-wrapped belongings. "Marcus packed everything himself," Eleanor said quietly. "Wouldn't let anyone help. Said it was too painful." Sarah wheeled herself inside, running her fingers over familiar objects. Their wedding china, photo albums, her grandmother's antique desk. Then she noticed something odd. Several boxes were labeled Sarah's work files in Marcus's handwriting, but she'd never brought work files home. She'd always been meticulous about keeping student information at school. "Mom, help me open these boxes." Inside, instead of teaching materials, she found laboratory notebooks, USB drives, and printed emails, none of which belonged to her. The papers were covered in complex molecular diagrams and pharmaceutical formulas. Her undergraduate biochemistry minor helped her recognize some basic structures, but this was clearly advanced doctoral-level work. One name appeared repeatedly: Dr. Sarah Chen Williams. "That's not me," Sarah said, confused. "I'm Sarah Chen. I never hyphenated my name, and I'm not a doctor." Eleanor frowned. "Maybe Marcus mixed up your things with someone else's." But as Sarah dug deeper, she found a biomedical conference badge with her photo but the wrong name. Dr. Sarah Chen Williams, Senior Research Scientist, Meridian Pharmaceuticals. The date on the badge was just 2 weeks before her accident. "This is my face," Sarah whispered, staring at the badge. "But this isn't my life." Her pulse quickened as she opened a leather journal from the bottom of the box. The handwriting was similar to hers but different, more rushed, stressed. The final entry was dated the day before her accident. "Marcus doesn't know I've discovered what he's done. The formula is hidden where he'll never think to look. If something happens to me, the truth is in our beginning." Sarah's blood ran cold. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity. Somehow, there were two versions of her life, the one she remembered and one she'd apparently lived, and Marcus had hidden evidence of both. "We need to go home," Sarah said suddenly. "To our old house." "But sweetheart, it was sold. Then we need to find out who bought it." Sarah's voice was steady despite her growing anxiety. "Because somewhere in that house is the answer to why my husband wanted me dead." The modest two-story colonial at 45 Maple Street looked exactly as Sarah remembered, except for the "sold" sign still planted in the front yard and the new security system warnings on every window. Sarah sat in her mother's car, studying the home where she'd supposedly lived a double life. "The realtor said it's been empty since the sale," Eleanor explained. "Some investment company bought it, but never moved anyone in. Strange, considering the housing shortage around here." Sarah noticed the neglected lawn, the accumulated mail. Why would someone buy a house and leave it vacant for 2 years? Unless they weren't interested in the house itself. But what might be hidden inside? "I need to get in there," Sarah said. "That's trespassing, sweetheart. We should go through proper channels." "Mom, someone tried to kill me. Marcus disappeared with everything we owned. And somehow, I was living as a pharmaceutical researcher while teaching high school. Proper channels aren't going to help us." That evening, they returned with flashlights and the spare key Sarah had always hidden beneath the fake rock by the back door, a detail she'd never told Marcus about. Her hands trembled as she turned the key, half expecting it not to work, but the lock clicked open. The house was eerily preserved, as if frozen in time, furniture covered in dust sheets, pictures still on the walls. But as Sarah moved through the rooms, leaning heavily on her walker, she noticed subtle signs of searching. Drawers slightly open, books pulled forward on shelves. Someone had been looking for something. In what had been Marcus's home office, Sarah found the first major clue. Hidden behind a false panel in his desk drawer were bank statements for accounts she'd never known existed. Deposits of $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, all made in the months before her accident. The source was listed as consulting fees from Nexus Biomedical LLC. "This is more money than we ever had," Sarah breathed. Marcus was a marketing manager at a tech startup. "Where did this come from?" Eleanor studied the papers. The timing. These large deposits started right around when those conference badges were dated. Sarah's legs gave out, and she sank into Marcus's old office chair. The pieces were forming a terrifying picture. He was selling something. Information, research. But from whom? In their bedroom, Sarah found more evidence of her double life. A second closet she didn't remember, filled with professional clothes too expensive for a teacher's salary. She struggled with the hidden safe behind a painting, her fingers fumbling with the combination several times before muscle memory finally kicked in. Her real birthday, not the one on her current driver's license. Inside the safe, 2 passports, both with her photo, one for Sarah Chen, teacher, one for Dr. Sarah Chen Williams, researcher, both seemingly legitimate. "Mom," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper, "I think I've been living 2 completely different lives, and I can't remember one of them." The discovery of the 2 passports sent Sarah into a spiral of confusion that lasted days. Back in her mother's spare bedroom, she spread out everything they'd found, trying to make sense of the impossible. How could she have been living as a pharmaceutical researcher while maintaining her career as a teacher? "Memory gaps after coma aren't unusual," Dr. Martinez had said when she'd carefully asked about amnesia. "The brain protects itself by suppressing trauma." But this wasn't just suppressed trauma. This was an entire identity she couldn't remember. Sarah decided to investigate Dr. Sarah Chen Williams. Using her mother's computer, she searched for any trace of this alternate version of herself. What she found made her stomach turn. Dr. Sarah Chen Williams had been a rising star at Meridian Pharmaceuticals, specializing in neurodegenerative disease research. Her published papers were brilliant, groundbreaking even. She'd been working on a revolutionary treatment for early-onset Alzheimer's when she'd suddenly resigned, just 1 week before Sarah Chen, the teacher, had her accident. "Look at this," Sarah told her mother, pulling up a news article. Dr. Chen Williams was about to present findings that could have changed millions of lives. Then she vanishes, and a week later I'm in a coma. Eleanor studied the screen. The timing can't be coincidental. Sarah found a contact number for Meridian Pharmaceuticals. She felt lightheaded as she dialed, unsure what she was hoping to learn. "Meridian Pharmaceuticals, how may I direct your call?" "I need to speak with someone about Dr. Sarah Chen Williams. She was a researcher there." The line went silent. Then, "Please hold." A different voice came on, male and cautious. "This is Director Harrison. May I ask who's calling?" This is Sarah Chen. I'm trying to locate Dr. Chen Williams. We're related." Another pause. "Ms. Chen, our records show Dr. Chen Williams resigned and left no forwarding information. That's all I can share. But I heard she was in an accident. I'm not aware of any accident. If you'll excuse me." The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone. Meridian claimed not to know about any accident, but she had been in an accident. Identified as Sarah Chen, the teacher. She pulled up the accident report from her medical files. Single car accident, brake failure, no other vehicles involved. But now she noticed something odd in the police notes. Driver was found wearing hospital Scrubs, despite being identified as local teacher. Why would she have been wearing scrubs? Unless she hadn't been coming from school at all that day. Mom, Sarah said slowly, I think I was trying to escape from somewhere when I crashed. And Marcus knew exactly who I really was. Sarah's investigation hit a wall until an unexpected message appeared in her inbox 3 days later. The subject line read, I know you're looking for answers about Meridian. The sender identified herself as Dr. Lila Patel, a former colleague of Dr. Chen Williams at Meridian. She proposed meeting at a public place, a busy cafe downtown where they could talk safely. Sarah arrived early, accompanied by her mother. She was still using a cane, but had graduated from the walker. Dr. Patel was already there, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that darted nervously toward the door every few minutes. I can't believe you're alive, Lila whispered after they'd sat down. When you disappeared, and then we heard about a teacher named Sarah Chen in a coma. Some of us wondered, but... She studied Sarah intently. You really don't remember anything? Remember being a teacher, living a normal life with my husband Marcus, but this other life, the research, Meridian, it's all blank. Lila's expression darkened. Then what they did to you worked. Sarah, Dr. Chen Williams, you weren't just any researcher. You were brilliant. You developed a compound that could reverse early-stage Alzheimer's. Not just slow it down. Reverse it, Eleanor gasped. Sarah gripped her coffee cup tighter. That's impossible. The brain doesn't regenerate like that. That's what everyone thought. But you proved them wrong. You isolated a protein that could trigger neurogenesis in damaged areas. The implications were staggering. We're talking about a cure worth billions. So why did I leave Meridian? Lila glanced around again before answering. You discovered that the company's board had made a deal with Nexus Biomedical. They were going to bury your research. Bury it? Why would they bury a cure? Because Nexus makes the leading Alzheimer's management drugs, expensive treatments that patients need for life. A cure would destroy their entire business model. They paid Meridian's board hundreds of millions to shelve your work. Sarah felt sick, and I threatened to go public. You did more than threaten. You backed up all your research and walked out with it. Said you'd find another way to get it too. Mark it. A week later you were in that accident. Lila pulled out a flash drive. I saved what I could of your published work. It's not complete. You kept the crucial elements in your head or hidden somewhere, but it might help you remember. Why are you helping me? Eleanor asked suspiciously. Because my mother has Alzheimer's, Lila said simply. She's in stage 2. Now, Sarah's cure could save her, could save millions. And because, she hesitated, because I think I know who helped them do this to you. Sarah's heart began pounding. Who? Your husband worked at a tech startup, right? Neural Sync Technologies? Sarah nodded slowly. They specialize in experimental memory modification software. Still in trials, highly classified. But Marcus Chen was their lead programmer on something called Project Tabula Rasa. Clean slate. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Marcus hadn't just betrayed her, he'd helped erase her. The meeting with Dr. Patel had opened a floodgate of dangers Sarah hadn't anticipated. Within 48 hours of their cafe conversation, strange things began happening. Her mother's car tires were slashed overnight. Their home internet was hacked, with threatening messages appearing on screen. Stop digging or finish what you started. But it was the phone call that truly shook them. Hello, Sarah. The voice was cultured, cold. Or should I say Dr. Chen Williams? I hear you've been asking questions about your past. Who is this? Someone who'd prefer you stayed buried. You were supposed to remain asleep, you see. A vegetable in a hospital bed poses no threat, but an awake Sarah Chen, searching for her. Memories, that's a problem. Is this about the Alzheimer's cure? A pause. You remember more than you should. That's unfortunate. Let me be clear, cease your investigation immediately. Forget about Meridian, forget about your research, and live quietly as the school teacher you believe yourself to be. Otherwise, your next accident won't leave you in a coma. The line went dead. Sarah's hands shook as she set down the phone. "We're calling the police," Eleanor insisted. But when they tried, they discovered their situation was more complex than expected. The detective who took their statement seemed sympathetic until he ran Sarah's name through the system. "Ma'am, according to our records, you're flagged as a person of interest in corporate espionage. There's a sealed file from 3 years ago. Meridian Pharmaceuticals accused Dr. Chen Williams of stealing proprietary research." "That research was mine," Sarah protested. "That may be, but without proof, and with your documented medical condition." He shrugged apologetically. "Anyone could claim memory loss to avoid prosecution. I can't open an investigation based on conspiracy theories. They were on their own." That night, Sarah made a decision. If the system wouldn't help her, she'd have to help herself. She began working through the files Dr. Patel had given her, forcing her brain to engage with the complex biochemistry. At first, it was like reading a foreign language. Then, slowly, patterns began to emerge. Familiar patterns. She was deep in study when her mother screamed from downstairs. Sarah grabbed her cane and moved as quickly as she could, finding Eleanor at the living room window. Outside, a black SUV sat idling at the curb. It had been there for hours. "They're watching us," Eleanor whispered. Sarah's mind raced. They couldn't stay here, but where could they go? Then she remembered something from the journal in storage. "The truth is in our beginning." "Mum, where did Marcus and I first meet?" Eleanor looked confused by the change of subject. "At that medical conference in Chicago. You were there for teaching credits, and he was demonstrating some software. You always said it was fate, a teacher and a tech guy at a medical event, a medical conference, where both versions of her life could have existed simultaneously. We need to go to Chicago," Sarah decided. "Whatever I hid, it's connected to where this all began." The drive to Chicago took 8 hours, with Sarah constantly checking for the black SUV. Eleanor had insisted on driving, leaving Sarah free to study the materials from Dr. Patel. As they crossed into Illinois, fragments of memory began surfacing, not full scenes, but flashes of sensation and emotion. The Drake Hotel looked exactly as it had 4 years ago when the Medical Innovation Conference had taken place. Sarah convinced the desk manager to let them see the conference archives, claiming she was writing a retrospective article. "I need the attendee list from 2020, she said, her heart pounding. There it was. Dr. Sarah Chen Williams, Meridian Pharmaceuticals, and on the same page, Marcus Chen, Neural Sync Technologies, demonstrating revolutionary memory reconstruction. Software? My God, Eleanor breathed. He was there professionally. He targeted you. But it was the conference program that provided the biggest shock. Dr. Chen Williams had been scheduled to present on ethical considerations in neurological intervention. The abstract mentioned concerns about memory modification technology and its potential for abuse. I wasn't just developing a cure, Sarah realized. I was actively opposing what Marcus's company was doing. We weren't lovers who met by chance. We were on opposite sides of an ethical battle. They found the conference recordings in the hotel's digital archive. Sarah watched herself, Dr. Chen Williams, take the stage with confidence she didn't remember possessing. The woman on screen was passionate, articulate, and absolutely scathing about Neural Sync's work. The ability to selectively edit human memory isn't just dangerous, it's fundamentally unethical, her recorded self declared. Who decides which memories deserve to exist? Who protects the vulnerable from having their very identities rewritten? Then came the moment that made Sarah's blood run cold. During the Q&A, a familiar voice spoke from the audience. Marcus. Dr. Chen Williams, don't you think your pharmaceutical research into neural regeneration could be considered equally invasive? After all, changing brain chemistry is just another form of modification. On screen, Dr. Chen Williams smiled coldly. The difference, Mr. Chen, is consent. My patients choose treatment. Your technology could be used to alter someone's mind without their knowledge. Imagine someone using it to make a person forget who they really are. The irony was suffocating. Sarah paused the video, unable to breathe properly. He didn't just target you, Eleanor said slowly. He married you, gained your trust, and then used his own technology to erase your identity when you became a threat. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop now, or your mother joins you in forgetting. But Sarah was done being afraid, because she'd just remembered something else. A safety deposit box at the Chicago Mercantile Bank, registered under both names. If her past self had truly hidden the truth in their beginning, that's where it would be. Mom, she said, her voice steady with newfound determination. Tomorrow, we're going to find out exactly what I hid. And then we're going to destroy everyone who did this to me. The Chicago Mercantile Bank's safety deposit box required 2 keys. One Sarah found sewn into the lining of a jacket in storage, the other hidden in a hollowed-out conference award she'd nearly thrown away. Inside the box lay everything Dr. Chen Williams had died trying to protect: the complete Alzheimer's cure formula, documentation of Nexus Biomedical's conspiracy with Meridian, and most damning, recordings of Marcus admitting everything. Sarah slipped on the old headphones and heard her husband's voice, distorted by time but unmistakable. The memory suppression is working perfectly. She genuinely believes she's just a teacher. Phase 2 will involve gradual identity replacement. Eventually, Sarah Chen Williams will cease to exist entirely. Another voice responded, older, authoritative. And her research? Secured. She hid copies, but without her specific knowledge of the synthesis process, they're useless. Once the procedure is complete, the cure dies with her memories. Excellent. Your payment will be transferred as agreed. 50 million for the complete package, her research and her silence. Sarah removed the headphones, her entire body rigid with rage. 50 million. That's what her life had been worth to them. But the box contained one more item, a letter in her own handwriting. If you're reading this, then you've begun to remember. Know that the cure works. I've tested it. The complete synthesis instructions are encoded in our wedding video, the one Marcus insisted we have professionally edited. He never knew I hid the final component there. The base formula is incomplete, without the temperature variations and timing sequences shown in the background of specific scenes. Trust no one from your old life except Dr. Lila Patel and a security guard named James Washington. They're the only ones who question my death. Fight back. Lives depend on it. The real you. Sarah looked at her mother. We need that wedding video. They drove back to Cedar Rapids in tense silence. The black SUV had found them again, maintaining a steady distance behind them. Sarah didn't care anymore. Let them follow. She had what she needed. But when they arrived at the storage unit, they found it ransacked. Boxes overturned, photos scattered, and the wedding video missing. No, Sarah breathed, falling to her knees among the wreckage. Looking for this? Marcus stood in the doorway holding the DVD. He looked older, worn down by 3 years of guilt or greed. Sarah couldn't tell which. Behind him stood 2 men in suits. "Hello, darling," he said, his smile a grotesque parody of affection. "I hear you've been recovering memories. We can't have that." "You bastard!" Eleanor snarled, stepping protectively in front of her daughter. Marcus ignored her, focusing on Sarah. "You were supposed to stay asleep. Do you know how much money I've lost keeping you alive? The medical bills alone." "You mean the bills you paid with blood money?" Sarah stood slowly, leaning on her cane. 50 million, Marcus? Was that really enough to sell my soul?" His face hardened. "You never understood the bigger picture. Your cure would have destroyed an entire industry, thousands of jobs, billions in revenue. Millions of lives," Sarah countered. "My cure could have saved millions of lives. Your cure was naive idealism. The world doesn't run on good intentions. It runs on profit margins." He gestured to the men behind him. "Now you're going to come with us. Time for another adjustment. To your memories. Don't worry, this time we'll make sure you forget even how to speak." Sarah smiled then, a cold expression that made Marcus step back. "There's just one problem with your plan." "What's that?" "I already released everything." She held up her phone, showing a sent email with dozens of recipients. Every major news outlet, the FBI, the CDC, the complete conspiracy, including your recorded confession. "It went out 10 minutes ago." Marcus's face went white. "You're bluffing. You don't have... The wedding video was a decoy, you idiot. I knew you'd go for it. The real formula was encoded in something else, something you'd never think to look for." Sarah laughed bitterly. "Our first dance song, the one you claimed to hate, I had the DJ modulate the audio frequencies to contain the synthesis data. It's been on YouTube for 5 years, marked as private. I just made it public." The men in suits were already backing away, phones ringing urgently. Marcus lunged forward, rage twisting his features. But Sarah was ready. 3 years of physical therapy had taught her balance. And 3 years of stolen life had taught her anger. She swung the cane in a perfect arc, catching him in the knee. He went down hard, crying out. "That's for stealing my life," she said calmly. Then she brought the cane down on his reaching hand. "That's for making me forget who I was." Finally, she pressed the cane tip against his throat. "And this is for every Alzheimer's patient who died while my cure sat buried." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The FBI had been monitoring her emails, waiting for exactly this moment. Marcus looked up at her, finally seeing the brilliant scientist. He'd tried to erase. "Sarah, please." "My name," she said firmly, "is Dr. Sarah Chen Williams, and you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and crimes against humanity." As the FBI agents flooded the storage facility, Sarah felt the last piece of her identity click into place. She was whole again, scarred, changed but unbroken, and she had work to do. The arrest of Marcus Chen sent shockwaves through multiple industries. Within hours, FBI raids were conducted at Neural Sync Technologies, Meridian Pharmaceuticals, and Nexus Biomedical. Sarah watched the news coverage from a secure hotel room, finally understanding the scope of what she'd uncovered. "Breaking news tonight," the anchor announced. "Federal agents have uncovered what they're calling one of the largest medical conspiracies in history. The suppression of a potential Alzheimer's cure has led to dozens of arrests, with more expected." But Sarah knew the real battle was just beginning. Having the formula public was one thing, getting it into production was another. The pharmaceutical industry's lawyers were already mobilizing, claiming the research was stolen property. Dr. Lila Patel arrived at the hotel with someone Sarah hadn't expected, James Washington, the security guard her letter had mentioned. He was a large man in his 60s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Dr. Chen Williams," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I knew they were lying about your death. The night before your accident, you gave me something." He pulled out a sealed envelope, said if anything happened to you, I should wait exactly 3 years and then find you. Don't know how you knew you'd survive, but here we are. Inside was documentation Sarah had filed with the World Health Organization, establishing her research as humanitarian property, unable to be patented or monopolized by any single entity. "My God," Lila breathed. "You planned for this. Even if they erased your memory, you set up safeguards." "The old me was brilliant," Sarah said softly. "I'm still trying to live up to her." The media frenzy intensified when Sarah agreed to a single televised interview. She appeared on 60 Minutes, her cane visible but her voice strong. "They stole 3 years of my life," she told the interviewer, "but worse, they stole 3 years of hope from every Alzheimer's patient in the world. My husband sold my identity for money. Meridian sold their integrity for profit, but the cure belongs to humanity now." The interview sparked global outrage. Alzheimer's advocacy groups organized massive protests. Scientists worldwide began collaborating to reproduce her work. Countries with universal healthcare immediately announced funding for trials. But the most powerful moment came when an elderly woman approached Sarah at a public event. "My husband died last year," she said, tears streaming. "Alzheimer's took him piece by piece. If your cure had been available..." She couldn't finish, but she pressed a photo into Sarah's hands. "His name was Robert. Remember him when you're fighting. Remember all of them." Sarah kept that photo with her through everything that followed. The legal battles were fierce, but ultimately futile. With the WHO documentation and overwhelming public support, courts ruled that Sarah's research belonged in the public domain. The first trials began within months, showing remarkable success rates. But Sarah's victory was bittersweet when she received word that 3 other researchers had suffered similar fates, their memories modified, their breakthroughs buried. Dr. Michael Torres, who developed a revolutionary diabetes cure. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, creator of a universal flu vaccine. All disappeared after refusing to sell their work. "We need to find them," Sarah told her growing team of allies. "If Neural Sync did to them what they did to me, they might still be alive somewhere, living false lives." The search became a mission. Using the techniques that had triggered her own memories, they reached out through media channels, hoping to spark recognition in the lost researchers. One by one, they surfaced. Dr. Torres was living as an accountant in Denver, with no memory of his medical training. Dr. Tanaka worked at a grocery store in Seattle. Each recovery brought new evidence, new suppressed cures, new hope for millions. The trial became a landmark case for medical ethics and human rights. Sarah testified for days, her recovered memories providing crucial evidence. Marcus, facing life in prison, finally broke and revealed the full extent of the conspiracy. 17 researchers targeted, their life's work stolen and locked away. They called it the Vault, he testified, trying to bargain for a lighter sentence. A facility in Montana where all the suppressed research is stored. I can give you the location, the access codes, everything. The FBI raid on the Montana facility made international headlines. Inside, they found not just medical breakthroughs, but the preserved research of every silenced scientist. Cures for rare diseases, revolutionary treatments, vaccines that could save millions. Sarah stood in that vault, surrounded by the stolen, dreams of her colleagues, and made a vow. Every suppressed cure would see the light of day. Every silenced researcher would be found and restored. Every patient denied hope would get their chance. The judge's verdict reflected the magnitude of the crimes. Richard Blackwood, CEO of Nexus, life without parole. Marcus Chen, 50 years for conspiracy and attempted murder. Board members and conspirators, sentences ranging from 20 to 40 years. But for Sarah, the real victory came in the lab. Working with the restored researchers and new allies, they began producing the long-suppressed cures. The Alzheimer's treatment entered emergency production. Dr. Torres's diabetes cure started trials. Cancer survival rates jumped as Dr. Sharma's recovered immunotherapy was implemented. Standing before Congress 6 months later, advocating for the Medical Freedom Act that would prevent such suppression in the future, Sarah thought about the woman who'd awakened confused in a hospital bed. That woman had been broken, betrayed, alone. But she'd refused to stay that way. She'd fought for truth, for memory, for the right of humanity to heal. They thought they could erase us, Sarah told the packed chamber. But truth has a way of surfacing. Hope has a way of surviving. And humanity's need to heal will always overcome greed's desire to profit from suffering. The act passed overwhelmingly. A new era of medical transparency had begun, and Sarah Chen Williams, teacher, researcher, survivor, stood at its forefront, proof that some things couldn't be erased, some awakenings echo forever. The world watched as justice unfolded in the courtroom. The trial of Marcus Chen and the pharmaceutical executives became the most followed legal proceeding in history. But it was Sarah's testimony that riveted the globe. They didn't just steal. My research, she said from the witness stand, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. They stole my very self. They partitioned my mind like a computer hard drive, keeping the teacher while trying to delete the scientist. But human consciousness isn't data. It fights back. The prosecutor presented the evidence methodically. The recordings, the financial trails, the vault of suppressed cures. But the defense tried one last desperate move. Dr. Chen Williams, Marcus's lawyer, said smoothly, "Isn't it possible that your memories are confused? After all, you suffered severe brain trauma. How can the jury trust recollections from a damaged mind?" Sarah had prepared for this moment. "My mind was damaged by design," she replied. "Using technology meant to help people, perverted into a tool of control. But the beauty of truth is that it leaves traces." She presented her brain scans, showing the artificial patterns of memory suppression. These aren't the random gaps of trauma. These are surgical deletions, and like all deletions, they can be recovered. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours, guilty on all counts. As the verdict was read, Sarah felt no triumph, only relief. Justice had been served, but at such a cost. Outside the courthouse, thousands had gathered, patients holding pictures of loved ones lost to Alzheimer's, researchers inspired by her story, families given hope by the now freely available cures. Margaret Thompson, one of the first patients treated with Sarah's cure, approached the podium set up for press statements. At 75, her mind was sharp again, her memories restored. 6 months ago, I didn't recognize my own daughter, she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. I was disappearing one memory at a time. Today, I'm here to say thank you to the woman who refused to let them bury hope. One by one, patients came forward. Children with rare diseases now treatable. Diabetics free from insulin thanks to Dr. Torres's recovered research. Each testimony another nail in the coffin of the old system, but the moment that broke through Sarah's composure came when a young man approached. David Chen, Marcus's son from his first marriage. I'm sorry, he said simply, for what my father did. And I wanted you to know, I'm starting medical school next year. Someone needs to make sure this never happens again. Sarah studied this young man who shared Marcus's features, but clearly not his character. You're not responsible for your father's choices, she said gently. What matters is what you choose to do next. The reforms came swiftly. The Medical Freedom Act passed globally, making it a crime against humanity to suppress humanitarian research. Patent laws were rewritten. Open-source medical development became the new standard. Sarah received the Nobel Prize in Medicine, but she shared the stage with her fellow recovered researchers. Dr. Torres, Dr. Tanaka, Dr. Sharma, all standing together, living proof that erased voices could return. This prize belongs to every researcher who was silenced, Sarah said in Stockholm, to every patient who waited for cures locked in vaults, and to everyone who believes that healing belongs to humanity, not to the highest bidder. The Chen Williams Institute for Open Medical Research opened its doors on the 4th anniversary of her awakening. Built with funds recovered from the convicted corporations, it stood as a beacon of transparent science. The memorial wall in the lobby listed not just the researchers who'd been silenced, but the estimated 10 million patients who died waiting for suppressed cures. Sarah stood before that wall during the opening ceremony, touching names etched in marble. Robert, the husband in the photograph, thousands of others. We cannot bring them back, she said to the assembled crowd, but we can ensure their deaths were not in vain. Every cure we develop, every life we save, honors their memory. The Institute's first year saw explosive progress. With researchers working openly, sharing data freely, breakthroughs came weekly. The old model of competitive secrecy was dead. In its place rose a global network of healing. Sarah's personal life had also found peace. She'd begun dating Michael, a fellow teacher who'd attended one of her lectures and asked remarkably thoughtful questions about the ethics of memory. I don't care that you're famous, he'd said on their third date. I care that you choose to keep teaching despite everything. The world needs scientists, but it also needs people who can inspire the next generation. Eleanor, now 78 and healthy, thanks to preventive treatments developed from the recovered research, thoroughly approved. He makes you laugh, she noted. After everything, you deserve someone who makes you laugh. 5 years after waking from her coma, Sarah stood at a podium in the UN General Assembly, addressing representatives from every nation. "We've proven that open science works," she reported. "In 5 years, we've cured or found effective treatments for 23 previously untreatable conditions. Healthcare costs have plummeted. Life expectancy has increased, all because we chose cooperation over competition, transparency over secrecy." But she also issued a warning. "The technology that stole my memories still exists. In the wrong hands, it remains dangerous. We must ensure that human consciousness remains sovereign, that our memories remain our own." The speech led to the Global Cognitive Rights Charter, protecting mental privacy as a fundamental human right. That evening, in her hotel room, Sarah video-called with some of the restored researchers. Dr. Torres had just announced a breakthrough in regenerative medicine. Dr. Tanaka's universal vaccine had eliminated flu deaths for 2 consecutive years. "We're not just making up for lost time," Torres said. "We're accelerating beyond what any of us could have achieved alone." That's the real irony, Sarah reflected. They tried to silence us separately. In bringing us together, they created something far more powerful. After the call, she stood on the balcony, looking out at New York's lights. Each light might represent someone whose life had been saved or would be saved by their work. Her phone buzzed with a message from the Institute. Another memory-modified researcher had been found and successfully restored. A woman who developed a treatment for traumatic brain injuries. The network of recovery continued to grow. Sarah smiled. 8 years ago, she'd awakened alone and confused, her identity stolen, her work buried. Today, she stood at the center of a global transformation in how humanity approached healing. The woman they'd tried to erase had become indelible. The memories they'd tried to steal had returned stronger. The cures they'd tried to bury had bloomed into a garden of hope that spanned the globe. And this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, she would continue the work, teaching students in the morning, researching in the afternoon, advocating always for the principle that had guided her recovery. Truth survives. Memory persists. Healing belongs to all. Marcus remained in prison, his fortune confiscated to fund research. He'd written several times, seeking forgiveness she wasn't ready to give. Perhaps one day, but not yet. For now, she had work to do, lives to save, memories to protect, a future to build where no one would wake up wondering who they really were, where no breakthrough would be buried for profit, where healing would flow as freely as knowledge. Sarah Chen Williams had lost 3 years, but gained a purpose that would last a lifetime. And somewhere in the world, right at this moment, someone was receiving a cure that shouldn't have existed, recovering memories that should have been lost forever, living a life that greed had tried to steal. That was vindication. Enough, that was victory. 5 years after the trial, Sarah stood in the gleaming atrium of the Chen Williams Global Health Initiative. The building rose 30 stories in the heart of Geneva, its architecture a testament to transparency, walls of glass that hid nothing, laboratories visible to all who passed by. "Dr. Chen Williams, they're ready for you," her assistant Jennifer announced. Today marked a special milestone, the millionth patient treated with previously suppressed cures. But more importantly, it was the launch of Project Lazarus, an initiative to find and restore the estimated 8,000 remaining victims of memory modification worldwide. The auditorium was packed with representatives from 150 nations. Sarah took the stage, no longer needing her cane, her recovery complete in body and mind. 7 years ago, I woke up not knowing who I was, she began. Today, we wake others, not just from disease, but from the theft of their very selves. Behind her 20 recovered individuals stood, former researchers, activists, and whistleblowers who'd been erased for threatening corporate profits. Each had been found through the network Sarah had built, their memories carefully restored using the protocols developed from her own recovery. Dr. Michael Torres spoke on behalf of the group. They stole years from us, made us forget our families, our work, ourselves. But Sarah proved we could come back. Today, we're not just restored, we're part of something greater. After the ceremony, Sarah walked through the initiative's floors. Each level hummed with purpose. The Alzheimer's wing had just announced a preventive vaccine. The Rare Disease Division was tackling conditions affecting fewer than 100 people worldwide. The ultimate unprofitable patients. In her office, an unexpected visitor waited. Sarah Chen, Marcus's mother, now 83 and clear-minded thanks to the treatments. I know I have no right to be here, Helen began. Sarah gestured for her to sit. You're always welcome, Helen. How's David? Graduating from medical school next month, top of his class in bioethics. Helen smiled sadly. He's everything his father could have been. She pulled out an envelope. Marcus, he died last week. Heart attack in prison. He left this for you. Sarah stared at the envelope but didn't take it. I'm sorry for your loss, she said, meaning it. Despite everything, she'd found peace with the past. He wanted you to know about 12 more research. Vaults, Helen continued. Locations, access codes, everything. Said it was the only thing he could do to balance the scales. Sarah accepted the information without touching the letter. Marcus's final words could remain unread. His actions, both terrible and redemptive, spoke louder than any apology. The new vaults yielded treasures of suppressed science, cures for childhood cancers deemed too rare to profit from, treatments for diseases affecting primarily developing nations. Each discovery saved lives and proved again the crime of placing profit over people. Sarah's personal life had also flourished. She and Michael had married in a small ceremony at the Institute, surrounded by the extended family she'd built through shared purpose. Their daughter Eleanor was 3 now, a bright, curious child who played in laboratories like other children played in sandboxes. Mama's saving the world again, Michael would tell Eleanor when Sarah worked late on particularly challenging cases. Just doing my job, Sarah would reply, though they both knew it was far more than that. The memory restoration program had evolved beyond recovering suppressed researchers. They now helped victims of all kinds of trauma, using the technology ethically to help people process and integrate difficult experiences. One case particularly moved Sarah, a young woman named Lisa, whose memories of her mother had been intentionally suppressed by an abusive father using bootleg neural sync technology. I knew something was missing, Lisa said after her restoration. There was this hole in my heart. Now I remember her voice, her laugh, her love. You gave me back my mother. These individual victories meant as much as the global changes. Each person restored was a life reclaimed, a family reunited, a truth recovered. The 10th anniversary of Sarah's awakening approached. Media worldwide prepared retrospectives, but Sarah was focused on the future. In her laboratory, she worked on her most ambitious project yet, a protective protocol that would make memory modification impossible without conscious consent. No one should have their mind violated again, she explained to her team. We're creating a cognitive vaccine, protection against the theft of self. Lila Patel, now co-director of the initiative, reviewed the preliminary data. It works. We can actually protect human consciousness from unauthorized access. They published the findings freely, as with all their work. Within months, the protocol was being implemented globally. The age of memory theft was ending. That evening, Sarah stood on her office balcony, Geneva spread below. Her phone buzzed. With its nightly update, 42,000 lives saved today through freely distributed cures. The number still took her breath away. Michael joined her, Elena asleep in his arms. Thinking about the past? Thinking about the future, Sarah corrected. Every person we restore can restore others. Every cure we release enables more discoveries. It's exponential hope. Speaking of the future, Michael said, Elena asked if she could have a sister. Thoughts? Sarah smiled, thinking of all the children who would grow up in a world where medicine served humanity rather than profit. I think we have room for more hope in our lives. As they went inside, Sarah paused at her desk where 3 photos sat. The confused woman waking from coma, the determined survivor at trial, and the confident leader at the UN. The same face, transformed by purpose. A message arrived from the Mars colony. They'd successfully synthesized 5 of the recovered cures using Martian resources. Medicine was becoming truly universal. Another message from David Chen, Marcus's son who'd become like a brother to her. Defended my thesis today, dedicated it to the woman who proved that truth survives and families are chosen. Thank you for choosing me. Sarah smiled through sudden tears. This was what Marcus had never understood. Wealth wasn't measured in hidden millions, but in lives touched, memories restored, futures made possible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more victims to find and restore, more cures to develop and distribute, more battles to ensure medicine remained free and open. But tonight, she was simply grateful. Grateful for Eleanor, who'd stood by her through the confusion and fear. For Lila and James, who'd risked everything to help her. For Michael, who loved both the teacher and the researcher. For Elena, who would grow up believing that changing the world was normal, and yes, even grateful for the journey itself. Without the betrayal, the loss, the fight to remember, she might have remained a brilliant but isolated researcher, her cure helping thousands instead of millions. Marcus had tried to split her in 2. Instead, he'd forged someone stronger than either half could have been alone. The woman who'd awakened broken had healed not just herself, but the very concept of medical research. The teacher continued to educate. The researcher continued to discover. And Sarah Chen Williams, whole, purposeful, and surrounded by chosen family, continued to prove that some things couldn't be stolen. Truth, love, the unquenchable human drive to heal. As she tucked Elena into bed, her daughter asked, "Mama, will you tell me the story? About the woman who remembered?" "Once upon a time," Sarah began, as she had so many times, "there was a woman who forgot who she was. But inside her, the truth was sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake up." Eleanor smiled, already knowing the ending. How the woman not only remembered, but became more than she'd ever dreamed possible. It was, Sarah reflected, the best kind of story. The kind that was true. The kind that inspired others to wake up and remember their own power to change the world. And somewhere tonight, in a laboratory or hospital or quiet home, someone was receiving a cure that existed because one woman refused to stay asleep. The ripples continued, endless and beautiful, each one carrying the promise that healing belonged to all. 10 years had passed since Sarah Chen awakened from her coma. Standing before the United Nations General Assembly, she could hardly recognize the frightened woman who'd stumbled through hospital corridors, searching for a husband who'd betrayed. Her distinguished delegates, she began, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who'd changed the world. Today marks not just the 10th anniversary of the Medical Freedom Act, but a transformation in how humanity approaches healing itself. The statistics displayed behind her told an incredible story. Previously incurable diseases now had treatments, 12 million lives saved through recovered cures, healthcare costs reduced by 70% globally, 1,000 memory modification victims fully restored 14/7. Countries participating in open medical research, but numbers cannot capture the true revolution, Sarah continued. We haven't just cured diseases. We've cured the disease of greed in medicine. We've proven that when knowledge flows freely, miracles multiply. After her speech, she walked through the UN gardens with Secretary General Martinez. The Mars colonies are requesting expansion of the medical facilities, he noted. And the Jupiter Moon expedition wants you to personally oversee their health protocols. Sarah smiled. Medicine has no borders, not even planetary ones. We'll make it happen. That evening was special. The wedding of David Chen to Dr. Maria Santos, a brilliant researcher he'd met during his bioethics studies. Sarah had been asked to officiate. You gave me back my purpose when my father tried to destroy yours, David had said when asking. You showed me that we choose our family, through our actions, not our blood. Standing before the gathered guests, Sarah spoke of transformation, of choosing to build rather than destroy, of love growing in the most unlikely places. When she pronounced them married, she saw not Marcus's son, but her chosen family member. A proof that darkness need not breed darkness. At the reception, Michael spun her on the dance floor. Their children, Elena, now 10, and Thomas, 7, laughing as they tried to cut in. Any regrets? Michael asked, continuing their anniversary tradition. How could I regret the path that brought me here? Sarah replied. Then, after a pause, I even forgive Marcus. Michael's eyebrows rose. Really? He's been gone 5 years, hating a ghost. Takes energy I need for the living. He was broken by a broken system. We fixed the system. The rest is history. The forgiveness had come gradually, helped by watching David become everything Marcus could have been. By seeing the good that emerged from the recovered vaults, by understanding that Marcus had been a symptom, not the disease itself. Her phone buzzed with an urgent message. A new memory victim had been found, a climate scientist whose groundbreaking carbon capture method had been suppressed and her identity erased. Sarah immediately began coordinating the restoration. Even tonight? Michael asked gently. Especially tonight, Sarah said. Every day someone waits is a day stolen from their life. This was her reality, always on call for those who'd been erased. But she wouldn't have it any other way. The next morning, Sarah stood in her latest project, the Memorial to the Forgotten. It honored not just the researchers who'd been silenced, but all the patients who died waiting for suppressed cures. The memorial took the form of a living garden, each plant representing a life lost or saved, the garden growing larger each year as more cures were released. Eleanor, now 85 and still sharp, thanks to preventive treatments, tended a section dedicated to Alzheimer's victims. Your father would be so proud, Eleanor said, watching Sarah work. "He always said you'd change the world. He just never imagined how literally." Sarah knelt beside her mother, planting a new flowering shrub. "He gave me the stubbornness. You gave me the compassion. Together, they made me unstoppable." They worked. In comfortable silence, 3 generations tending to growth. Eleanor, Sarah, and Elena, who was already showing signs of her mother's brilliance and her grandmother's wisdom. "Mom," Elena asked, "why did Dad's first dad try to hurt you?" Sarah had always been honest with her children in age-appropriate ways. He forgot that people matter more than money. He got lost in a system that rewarded the wrong things. But look what grew from that hurt. All these medicines, all these people helped. Sometimes the worst things teach us how to build better. That afternoon, Sarah received a video call that made her day. It was Lisa, the young woman whose memories of her mother had been restored years ago. She was holding a baby. "I named her Sarah," Lisa said, tears streaming. "If you hadn't given me back my memories of my mother, I wouldn't have known how to be one myself. This is your legacy too. All the love that gets passed down because you wouldn't let it be stolen." After the call, Sarah sat quietly in her office, overwhelmed by the ripple effects of her work. Every person restored didn't just reclaim their own life. They rebuilt families, continued work, passed on love that had been nearly lost. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Jennifer entered with a tablet. "The Nobel Committee called. They want to give you a special Lifetime Achievement Award." Sarah had already won 3 Nobel Prizes. "Tell them to give it to the team. I'm just one person who refused to stay erased. The real achievement belongs to everyone who helped." That evening, the family attended a concert. One of the restored researchers was also a concert pianist who'd been made to forget he could play. His performance was triumphant, each note a defiance of those who'd tried to silence his gift. "Music and medicine," Michael whispered. "Art and science. They tried to steal it all and failed," Sarah whispered back. "Beauty finds a way, just like truth." Later, tucking the children into bed, Thomas asked, "Mom, will bad people ever try to steal memories again?" Sarah sat on his bed, choosing her words carefully. "They might try, but we've built protections. More importantly, we've taught the world to watch for it, to fight it. You and Elena will grow up in a world that guards its memories and shares its cures. That's the world we're building for you." After the children slept, Sarah returned to her study. The walls were covered not with awards, but with photos. Every restored researcher, every major breakthrough, every life saved, her real treasures. She opened her computer to find a message that stopped her cold. It was from an underground group claiming to have found the original vault, the prototype facility where Neural Sync had first experimented with memory modification. Inside might be victims from before her time, people erased so long ago they'd been forgotten entirely. Sarah immediately contacted her team. If true, there could be dozens more to save, memories to restore, breakthroughs to recover. "We go at dawn," Lila confirmed. "James is already assembling security." Sarah smiled. 10 years after waking confused and alone, she was still fighting, still discovering, still refusing to let anyone remain erased. She looked at the photo on her desk, the confused woman in the hospital bed who'd started this journey. That woman couldn't have imagined this life, medicines flowing freely across the world, memories protected by law, a family built on choice and purpose, a legacy written in millions of lives saved. But perhaps that scared, determined woman had carried the seeds of all this. The teacher's need to share knowledge, the researcher's drive to heal, the human refusal to accept injustice. Marcus had tried to split her in two, thinking it would weaken her. Instead, he'd created someone who could bridge worlds, science and ethics, memory and hope, loss and triumph. Tomorrow she would search for more erased souls. Next week, she'd launch the Cognitive Protection Protocol globally. Next month, colonies on Mars would begin producing cures for Earth. The work would never end. As long as there were diseases to cure, memories to protect and people to heal, Sarah Chen Williams would be there, proving daily that some things couldn't be erased. She closed her computer and prepared for bed, pausing at the window to look out at Geneva's lights. Somewhere in those lights, someone was remembering who they were. Someone else was receiving a cure that shouldn't exist. Another was choosing to heal rather than harm. All because one woman woke up and refused to go back to sleep. The ripples continued, endless and beautiful, each one carrying the same message: memory survives. Truth endures. Healing belongs to all. And in the morning she would wake again, ready to continue the work that had transformed a personal tragedy into humanity's triumph. The woman who'd been erased had become indelible. The teacher had educated the world. The researcher had freed science itself. And Sarah Chen Williams, mother, warrior, healer, stood as proof that the human spirit, once awakened, could never truly be put back to sleep. Her story had begun with betrayal and loss. It would end someday far in the future with a world transformed, where no cure could be buried, no memory stolen, no life valued less than profit. But that ending was still being written, one restored memory, one freed cure, one saved life at a time. And Sarah wouldn't have it any other way. After all, the best stories, the true ones, never really end. They just inspire new beginnings.